marks her independence anniversary, we take a look at the nation's agriculture sector. Also, 63 years on, how has Nigeria's textile industry fared? This is Business Insight. I am Vivian Oguche. Welcome aboard. And to set the ball rolling, I've got Alfreda Ambe Abasi standing by to feed you the day's top stories in the world of business.
Thank you, Vivian. A lovely morning to you and welcome to Business News. Here we give you business updates and market trends, which will come after this break. Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu has approved the procurement of 12 MD-530 FKU's attack helicopters to enhance the Nigerian Army Aviation's operational capabilities in addressing security challenges. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taurid Lagbaja, made this announcement during a seminar on aviation security awareness. The Nigerian Army has been making progress in training pilots and support crews, and it seeks to learn from experienced aviation outfits like the Nigerian Air Force. The seminar discussed the role of aviation in strengthening ground operations and countering evolving security threats in Nigeria. And moving on, the Minister of State for Environment, Kunle Salako, has reported a 33% decrease in Nigeria's fuel consumption rate as a result of the removal of fuel subsidies. This move has also contributed to a reduction in emissions from petrol. Salako made this disclosure at the 78th United Nations General Assembly in New York while highlighting Nigeria's commitment to climate action. He also spoke about the importance of increased dedication to nature finance to achieve global conservation objectives and urged all countries to work together to fulfill these financial commitments for a sustainable future. And moving on, foreign suppliers have rejected letters of credit (LC) from local businesses due to foreign currency shortages in Nigeria. This has resulted to disruptions in businesses as they rely mainly on importation. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has not settled forward contracts since February 2023, leading to a backlog of around $3 billion. Correspondent banks are pulling out of local Nigerian banks, which is impacting transactions. To this end, businesses are turning to the black market to acquire dollars, increasing the cost of businesses and contributing to high inflation rates, which reached 25.8% in August 2023. Coming up next is the stock, commodities and currency market trends after this break. Thank you for staying with us. At the close of today's trading session on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, a total of 363,989,562 shares were traded in 7,018 deals. This trading activity corresponds to a market value of 4,429,778,111 naira and 57 kobo. Compared to the previous NGX trading day, yesterday's data shows an 11% decline in trading volume, a 17% decline in turnover, and a 9% decline in the number of deals. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange stands at 36,500 billion naira. In total, 117 equities listed on the NGX participated in today's trading session. Among them, there were 22 gainers and 22 losers. Cornerstone Insurance Company led the gainers with a 10% increase in its share price, closing at 1 naira and 65 kobo per share. This was followed by Consolidated Hallmark Insurance, UPDC, real estate investment, trust, and better glass company. On the losing side, corn oil recorded the largest price depreciation of 9.99%, closing at 18 naira and 20 kobo per share. It was followed by FTN cocoa processors, Owando, and Berger Paints. The equity with the highest trading volume was Access Holdings with 50 million shares traded, followed by Transcorp Nigeria, United Bank for Africa, and Zenith Bank. And at the conclusion of today's trading session on the Malawi Stock Exchange, MSE, a total of 11,046,691 shares were exchanged, corresponding to a market value of 1,852,397,353 Malawian kwacha and 1 tambala. Compared to the previous MSE trading day, yesterday's data indicates a remarkable 95% increase in trading volume and an impressive 197% surge in turnover. The current market capitalization of the Malawi Stock Exchange stands at 6,430 billion Malawian kwacha. In total, 10 equities listed on the MSE participated in today's trading session. However, National Bank of Malawi experienced no change in its share price, resulting in 0% share per price appreciation. On the downside, MBS Bank had the largest price depreciation, ended the day with a decrease of 0.45 at 109 Malawian kwacha and 50 tambala per share. This was followed by FDH Bank and Telecom Networks Malawi. The equity with the highest trading volume was Airtel Malawi, with a total of 9,410,000 shares traded. It was followed by FMB Capital Holdings, Blantyre Hotels, and Ilovo Sugar. In the latest commodities market updates, here are the current prices. Wheat is trading at 589.25 US cents per unit. Gold is priced at $1,900.82 US dollars per ounce. Silver is valued at $22.92 US dollars per ounce. Copper is trading at 3.64 US cents per unit, and Brent crude oil at 93.99 US dollars per barrel. And the latest updates on currency in the parallel market: the USD buys at 990 naira and sells for 1,000 naira. The British pound exchanges between 1,255 to 1,265 naira, while the euro is purchased at 1,040 naira and is sold for 1,050 naira. It's a wrap on the business news this morning. I am Alfreda Ambe-Bassi. Vivian Oguche is waiting to walk you through the next phase of Business Insights. Stay with us.
No business survives the long run with a mediocre run in it. So we grew up in an era where our parents wanted us to be doctors, engineers, and lawyers. And we carry this on to our children. We want our children to go to university and come out to be doctors, engineers, and lawyers. But that is not our role in their lives. Our role in the lives of our children is to help them to find their purpose, what they are passionate about, and give them the opportunities and the resources to pursue that purpose and achieve that purpose and if possible, help them to build a business out of it. Realizing that it may be totally a tangent with what we are doing or the business we have built that we're expecting them to come and run. They may not be interested in that. And this is precisely what business schools should also do, to help people to find their passion zone, their purpose, and help them to actualize it and make a business out of it. That is the way in which we can have thriving and sustainable people building businesses that they stay with. If we force them to do what we want them to do, which they don't have the passion for, at best, they'll be mediocre. No business survives the long run with a mediocre running it.
and I got with me Emmanuel Aberson, CEO, Trema Agro Services Limited. He's also the Executive Director of Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management, Rwanda. Now, but before I bring on my guest, I'd like to give you a little bit of information as to what we are talking about today. We gave you a sneak peek when we introduced the show, but we're talking about agriculture in Nigeria as well as Nigeria's textile industry as we count down to Nigeria's 63rd birthday. So agriculture in Nigeria dates far back to the pre-colonial era. Now, subsistence agriculture was overwhelmingly dominant on the eve of colonial rule in Nigeria. Now, the decline of subsistence farming, urban-rural migration, the pursuit of blue-collar job, and the unattractiveness of agriculture as the years rolled by might have been responsible for the decline in agriculture. Some of these things are what my guests are going to be speaking to on the show. Now, I said guests because joining us virtually as well is Leko Shote. He is a public affairs analyst and also a columnist with The Punch. But let me begin with you, Emmanuel. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you so much.
You know, so agriculture used to be Nigerians' mainstay.
Yeah.
Is that the case as we speak?
No, not longer. That was for 1950 to 1970, before the discovery of oil in Nigeria. So it's no longer. And that's why you see that we are, the government and everyone is not talking about diversification of the economy, because currently now economy is focused more on the oil sector compared to agriculture, which before now agriculture once used to be a major economy sort boom.
You know, we used to, I talked about subsistence farming, which is, you know, producing crop and livestock for you and your family, you know, not in surplus for export and all of that. That is no longer a tradition in Nigeria, right?
It's still the tradition in Nigeria, because over 70% of our farming population, the farming community in Nigeria are subsistence farmers. So it's more about, it's the smallholder farmers. So we should call them the smallholder farmers. Yeah.
Okay, go on, yeah.
Okay, so what we need to start looking at is how to merge the small farmers into bigger farms. Because even the fact that over 70% of these farming populations are smallholder farmers, one of the major challenges is the fact that the funding meant targeted or intervention targeted to these smallholder farmers does not get to them. That's number one. And then number two, the interest is no longer there. You could see in 1970, after the discovery of oil, everybody focus drifted from agriculture to oil. Now, lately, we now have the boom in the surge in the fintech industry, and every young person now want to. In our hub, we receive more applications on fintechs than agrotech, even when we clearly stated that we are for agrotech. So these are some of the challenges at the moment. And to make it worse, I will say that the farmers associations in Nigerians are not even making it easier for smallholder farmers, because they claim, or they are claimed to be the associations that represent these smallholder farmers. But their leadership are driven by comrades, which I'll say these are touts in honorable regalia. So you have more of fragments, like this fragment, this fragment, this fragment, this. The same association, let's say, for example, Cashew Farmers Association, you're going to see a fraction of this, a fraction of this. So everything is not unified.
No,
it's no synergy.
Okay.
So the smallholder farmers who are meant to even produce for themselves and for their family do not even have the funding targeted to them. Because until we talk about
so funding is an issue.
Funding is a very big issue.
So I'm going to come back to you to speak to funding. But let me bring on Leko Shote. Thank you so much, Leko, for joining us on Business Insights today. So Nigeria was famous for the export of groundnut, palm kernel, cashew, ginger, and all of these other major crops. But something happened along the line. I mean, we used to have the groundnut pyramids that was very popular in Kano State. It was introduced by Alhaji Dambata, yeah, and it was something that made Nigeria very proud in the days. If my producer can roll some of the pictures of the groundnut pyramids while Lagos speaks to this issue. But I want you to walk us through the agriculture sector in Nigeria from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s till date.
Well, it's not that good to be that smooth, but let's put it this way. In 1960, sorry, at our independence, Nigeria had agriculture was 63% of our economy. As of today, it is 23% of our economy. It employed about 70% of our economy. Incidentally, it's still employing about 70% of our economy. We used to be the second largest producer and exporter of cocoa, for example, which was our biggest export product at that time. Now we are number four. After Ghana was number one, Ivory Coast has gone ahead of Ghana. So Ivory Coast is number one, or what we call Côte d'Ivoire, and then followed by Ghana. And then, interestingly, Indonesia came in. So Nigeria is number four. It just tells you how it is. Now, because what the other guest was suggesting, it is not so necessarily because, only because we lost interest in agriculture, but also because new technology came in, new industries came in, and so it becomes agriculture became relatively smaller, But the point is this: the danger in what we are dealing with, if we begin to look at relativity to other sectors of the economy, we may lose the focus. The point is that, for example, almost 30% of our import is foodstuff, for example. We do not have food security. We don't have food security, and it makes our economy very vulnerable. Very, very, very vulnerable. And it's beginning to look as if we don't take very quick decisions to industrialize our economy, our agricultural sector, we may be losing it, and it may be a very dangerous place to be in, as we are already failing right now. Why is the Naira very weak? It is because we are importing so much, and so there's pressure on the Naira. We have to look for the dollar, which is the currency of international trade. Before we can even eat, we are importing practically all foodstuff. And then our industry, the raw materials that we use, I was in the textile industry for some time, and you find out that our raw materials is imported. Even those ones the raw materials that we use, that they said that we buy in Nigeria, actually the input for those our companies that we buy from is imported. So we are looking at a situation where our economy is entirely dependent practically on other countries. Let me give you a case in point. In Nigeria, at least 13 states in northern Nigeria can grow wheat. Last year, when the Ukrainian-Russian war started, everybody panicked. And you and I know the price of bread today now, simply because we didn't pay attention to agriculture. And then one other thing is there's a cultural problem to this agricultural problem, is that I recall when we were much younger, there's a song, I've been wanting you to sing the song so that, because our guests, our listeners, viewers may not be able to understand the Yoruba. But what it means is that it is better for you to go to school, which is okay. Now, they now de-emphasize certain things, including agriculture. So the brightest and the smartest will not go into agriculture. A case in point, our vice president has a BSc in agricultural science. Guess what? He went to work in the bank. A lot of agriculture graduates went to work in the bank. They went to work in other sectors. It just tells you that culturally, we have de-emphasized the dignity of labor in agriculture. And so even our best hands are moving away. Even people with professional, educational, academic qualifications are moving away from agriculture into other sectors. So that's, in a nutshell, an idea of where we are and how we got to where we are.
Thank you.
Vivian.
Thank you so much, Lekon. That was insightful. Earlier on I talked about the granite pyramids, which were the invention of Al-Hassan Dan Tata, a prominent knot trader. Do you see a comeback? Are we going to have a return of the granite pyramids, not just in Kano, but in other parts of Nigeria? Are we going to see cashew in Kogi State, in Ochaja, a part of Kogi State which produces a lot of cashew? Are we going to see exports from places like that? What do you think, though?
Yeah, all I've said does not mean that we are not thinking about it. What I think is that we are not desperate enough yet because of the oil money that we use to acquire foreign exchange. It's like easy money. It's an easy pick for us. We can get it since the oil boom. You probably remember a former head of state of Nigeria who says money is not Nigeria's problem, but how to spend it. And then he went to, was it Jamaica or Tobago, one of these Caribbean countries, and started paying their civil servant salary. So as long as we have this easy pick, we will likely be, we will likely not pay too much attention to it. But you could see even the last government, there was the central bank governor came up with what he called Anchor Borrowers Fund, which was badly implemented. And in any case, the central bank government, central bank should not have gone into giving loans to individuals. The policy was badly, as good as it was badly messed up. I know that a time is coming that we have to feed ourselves. I understand that we are not just 200 million Nigerians now. We are probably about 230. The pressure for food is coming to a point that people, just the same way that attention shifted to easy pick from oil, the food insecurity that we are experiencing will compel us to go back into, at least let's provide the food that we are going to eat, if we will not even also provide the raw materials. There's something called agro-allied industry. What it means essentially is that those industries use agricultural crops or products as their raw materials. That's what it means. It is going to get to that point that, the textile industry, as I've told you, cotton. Do you know that Nigeria's cotton was so good that when Egypt was going to get into the business of growing cotton, they came to Nigeria to pick the seedlings from us. I'm sure you already know about Indonesia that came here in the 1960s to pick our palm oil seedlings, and they grew it. Now they import, or they rather export, vegetable oil to Nigeria. And I've been hearing that we have even started importing palm oil from Indonesia, which is, Nigeria, the Niger Delta of Nigeria used to be called the oil palm belt of Nigeria. Now, because we were exporting palm oil to the Western countries for them to make their butter, to make their soap and detergents and every other thing. Now there's a reverse. We are now importing this thing. But I can assure you, a lot of us, we are discussing it now, which shows that we know that there's a problem. We just haven't had the right leadership to identify what we need to do and stick to it and ensure that it is done. We need to begin to think of industrializing our agricultural sector. We need to be consistent. We need to be tenacious and keep rolling. We need to have an intentional, comprehensive plan. If you like, let's call it a Marshall Plan to go into the agri area. Listen, in the old Western region, there were what they call farm settlements established as far back as the 1950s, early 1960s. Practically all of them are moribund. I went into one, probably the biggest I understand in Ijebubo. It's called Akoje Farm Settlement. You are going to be very, very sad when you visit that place. It's a large expanse of land. It has become, almost desolate. Nothing is happening there, So we need to, at least, we have those things. We need to start to revive them so that we can, at least, let's provide food for ourselves and then raw materials for our industries. At least let's do that, even if we will not export to other countries.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Let me come back to the studio here. Emmanuel, Leko talked about the Anchor Borrowers Program, an initiation of this administration's predecessor. Did you benefit in any way?
No, I did not.
The Anchor Borrowers Program was meant to boost smallholder farmers, boost production of their commodities, stabilize input supply to agro-processors, and address the country's negative balance of payments on food, which brings us to one of the issues you mentioned earlier on, funding.
Yeah.
What would you expect government to do to address this challenge? Okay,
so we look at the implementation first of all, how the first was implemented. Though the government tried, they did their best, and then, one thing again in Nigeria is nobody will agree they benefit until maybe it is time for payback, just like the NISA relief fund loan during the COVID-19. A lot of Nigerians never agreed. No one came forward to say, I benefited from the loan until government, the new administration said, okay, we're going to be taking back the loan, they're debiting, it's like they're debiting my money and all of that. So in going forward, I will say that there's a model we tried in Rwanda, which was not to actually fund the farmers individually, because you're still funding subsistence farms. And at the end of the day, it is still, some are willing to pay back the loan, but unable. Because these lenders are divided into different categories. We have the willing, unable. We have the able, unwilling. We have the unable and unwilling. Then we have the able and willing.
Able and unwilling.
Unwilling.
What's the other one?
Unwilling and able.
Unwilling and able.
Able.
Able and unwilling.
Unwilling, yes.
Okay.
So the able and willing is the one that, go to hell, I'm not going to pay back. It's national cake.
You use the swear word on air.
Sorry. Sorry for that. It's like, I'm not going to pay back. They are able to pay it. They have the capacity, but they don't want to, because it is in the context like it is the national cake. This is my own share. It's from the federal government. Forgetting that this, if it is sustainable, they will keep benefiting from it year in and year out. So what we're looking at... So
you're looking at the value system?
The value system.
Mentality.
Yes. First of all, had to be addressed. Then the financial institutions themselves. Some will tell you, I had someone who said, don't worry, it's not a loan you pay back. It is from the federal government. National cake. It's national cake. So, and they are the one in position to even address the mentality first from the mind of the lenders that, the borrower, that this meant to be paid back. So when we look at for us to address this critically is to turn these smaller farms into bigger farms.
How do you do that?
So we form farmers into clusters, simply forming farmers into clusters. So in a particular region, they should do similar crop. So it's going to boost, it's going to now translate to mass production. So
like if you have millet,
everybody
will be producing millet.
So that is the method we tried in Rwanda, and probably why I came back to Nigeria for us to try it. We're already trying to do a test run of that in Plateau State.
How's it going?
It's going fine. We had conversations with the state government, specifically the chief of staff to the Plateau State government, and it's going fine. So what we're trying to do is now, these particular farmers should farm similar products. So because they're farming similar products, we can introduce mechanization. So when the loan is given to them, now this can be channeled properly. Because if you give individual farmers a loan, one had to go and look for laborers himself, like, okay, I don't get laborers now and all of that. So cultivation is not always at the same time. So it takes power from the producer to the buyer. But now when we do mechanized farming, so you just imagine 100 hectares of millet, 100 hectares of maize. So the farmers, because they are clustered, so they have a voice. Now that there's power in number. So we're now shifting the power from the buyer now to the seller. So we can also start talking about the selling power of these farmers, because their smaller farms have been merged into a bigger farm.
So when you talk about selling power, also you'd want to consider preservation.
Yes.
For example, people who farm tomatoes and all of that, and they transport it from the north to the west. Yeah. You find out that most of them get spoiled before they get to the destination where they want to sell it. What don't you think government should also look into that area? Government farmers, how goods can be preserved?
Definitely. You know, when you're talking about agriculture, we're looking at the whole value chain of agriculture: production, storage, distribution, down to consumption. So in all of this, when we invest properly, so there's just like Kogi State, during the cashew season, you see that the Jewish part of the cashew is literally wasted, which can also be transformed into another product. And in
cashew juice.
So in other part of the world, that is money. So when we are talking about agriculture, we're not just only talking about production. We're also looking at other value chains which will be invested into. That's a business. Storage is a business. I have some companies in Rwanda. What they do basically is storage. Their warehouse is storage, and they make good money.
All right, let me come back to Leko Shote. Before I let you go, Leko, he talked about funding and, grouping smallholder farmers into clusters to make them into large-scale farmers. I don't know what your thoughts are on this. I'm trying to have you wrap this up on agriculture and then have your input a little bit on textile before I let you go.
Well, that's actually the way to go. Reason being that a lot of these smallholder and holder farmers do not have the capital. They do not have the money, even the managerial capacity to function in such a way that they can, one, produce large scale, and then take advantage of large scale production. So the smartest thing to do is to cluster them together in what you might call cooperatives or some kind of vehicle to bring several smallholders together. Just as he has said, the same product, or the same crop, they come together. You can imagine several adjacent rice farms, for example, that could become as much as 20,000 acres in one belt. If they all join together, you know how much, the size of your farmland, and then by the time the returns come at the end of the day, it becomes, shall we say, it will determine your share of the dividends or returns from that business every year. And what is suggesting that there is advantage in large-scale production. There is advantage in having large combines to do business, because that is the only way you can compete with outside world. Otherwise, your unit cost will always be very high, and therefore you will not be competitive. But if you can come together into clusters, into cooperatives, you will discover that you will enjoy the advantage of large-scale production, meaning that your unit cost will go down, and you'll be able to compete with other countries of the world. There's a good place to go, I can assure you. Now, regarding the textile industry, I don't know those who advise government about the textile industry, but I think they are not coming up with the right approaches. I know, for example, that the Bank of Industry has some kind of intervention loan for the textile industry. I remember going to a bank and telling the bank when some members of a business that I was involved with were trying to get a loan from the bank. I went to the bank. I said, look, do not give us this loan. This is not what we need now. Find a way to influence government to ensure, for example, there is regular power. Find a way to ensure that there is, see, we import raw materials. We import practically all spare parts. You say we have textile industry in Nigeria. It's a lie. When you say you have textile industry, it is not just the companies that manufacture the textiles that constitute the textile industry. The companies that manufacture or to produce the raw materials, the companies that produce or manufacture the machineries that you use, the companies that manufacture even the spare parts that you use should be in Nigeria. That is when you can begin to say you have a textile industry. Otherwise, you do not have a textile industry. It's more comprehensive than that. And that goes into all the other types of industries in Nigeria. So it is not just for you to provide a 6% interventionist loan and say you have not done enough. How about having, cotton fields, for cotton farms, for example? How about railway lines running from the farm gates, from the cotton farms, for example, into the clusters where you have textile manufacturing companies? How about that? Nobody's talking about that, and then you keep telling them that there's no textile industry in Nigeria. But at best, we just have a combine of disparate importers of practically everything. So it's a bigger issue. It is not about giving loan. It's about looking at the industry and setting the right parameters so that practically at least is a percentage of manufacture of the inputs will be in Nigeria. At least 70 to 80% of the manufacture. We should be having companies that manufacture textile machineries in Nigeria. We should be having companies that manufacture textile machine spare parts in Nigeria. We should be having companies, so there should be, for example, in the farmlands, if you guarantee safety and security in the farmlands, then the cotton farm, I have a friend in Kano, he has about 1,000 acres of land of cotton. He doesn't go there anymore because it is not safe. So the only way we can begin to get the agricultural sector to function is to ensure that there is security on the farmlands. There's people are attacking them, kidnapping them, they are sending cattle to their farms to eat their crops and the rest of that. How do you sustain that? How do you sustain that? They kidnap you when you fight them, they kill you when they fight them. There has to be, something must be done about that before we can get back the agricultural sector to be a meaningful contributor into the economy and growth of Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Lekon. What you've done is to just wrap up talks we've had on the agriculture sector in Nigeria. And one of the very, very important points you raised was security. Put an end to the herders-farmers clashes, and then you probably have more people going back to their farms, and also make agriculture attractive for both the old and the young. Lekon Shote, thank you so much for being a part of the show this morning. You were very gracious for answering us at the shortest of notice. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything for you, Vivian.
Thank you. And also Emmanuel Aberson. Aberson is an expert in agric. You've actually opened our eyes into how you can turn a smallholder farmer into a big farmer, and that was very insightful. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So when we come back, Emmanuel Olorunfemi shall be joining us. Mr. Olorunfemi is a research manager at Africa Development Studies Center, Abuja. He's also a development expert. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. And we're just going to hit the ground running. I got Emmanuel, who has joined us, like we said earlier on. Thank you so much, Emmanuel Olorunfemi, for being a part of the show this morning. So at its peak, the textile industry had a manpower of 500,000 workers. That's 500,000, right? But this number shrunk from 175 firms in 1985 to less than 20 as at 2020. Now, employment-wise, the number of jobs provided by the industry took a dive from 137,000 jobs in 1996 to 24,000 jobs in 2008. This is a very sad trajectory, Emmanuel. Don't you agree?
I do. Definitely the sad trajectory. First of all, good morning.
Good morning.
And happy holiday.
Thank you. Oh, well, we're
Thank
not on
you.
holidays
So,
here. We're working.
it's a sad trajectory. I know you are an essential service provider.
Yeah.
So you have to be on 24/7. We need to listen to you and know what is going on around us. So having said that, the textile industry is an industry that has faced up and down. And not just up and down, it has been facing down in the last 20 years, to be specific. It was one of the industries that Nigeria can be proud of after our independence. It was vibrant, it was engaging, and it employed thousands of Nigerians. But because of, in industrial development, wear and tear happened to factories. And because of poor maintenance culture, and because everything was basically public-based, not generating competitive edge over other industry, invariably, the industry went into coma. And up to now, it has not been resuscitated. Having said that, the pathway to growing our textile industry is to liberate, to open up the economy in that side and make sure that more capable, interesting entrepreneurs are encouraged to dive in.
Okay, open up the economy. That's one of the recommendations you've made. Also, textile manufacturers in the country have said that smuggling, corruption, as well as other factors are deterrents to the growth of the sector. How do you handle these challenges as well, smuggling and corruption?
Smuggling, we have what we call tokumbo clothing, which is second-hand from Western countries. And it's one of those things that I think in custom list has been blacklisted. But as Nigeria, we know they still find the way to our shore in numbers. And when you compare, let's look at it from consumer perspective. We all have relatives who patronize these people. Instead of me buying a TM shirt, an average TM shirt that will cost me 18 to 24,000 naira. And that I have an opportunity to go to Bend and Select, the way we call it here, and pick something for 2,000, some maybe 5,000, highly grade. So there is a market for it. People can't afford the highest quality of products, especially when it happens to be from America, from the European Union. But they can afford the used products. Our car are second-hand. The same thing with our clothing. So it tells a lot because the manufacturing sector is no longer manufacturing our textile, our clothing. People look for produced one and they import it. And it's cultural based. Many people don't use cultural attires anymore. Our adire have been thrown into dustbin largely most of the time for corporate settings. So people will wear suits, shirt, tie, and to afford it, they have to look for used market that sells clothes and they purchase because it's cheaper for them. That is from the angle of a consumer. Now, from the manufacturer perspective, it's obvious that we have a popular market in Aba. If you go to Aba cloth making cluster within Aba market, you are going to see good suits being sold. These guys, they are local, but they know what they are doing. But you discover that the fabrics being used is still important. Now, what does that tell us from the producer angle? It tells us that able to produce a quality suit made by Nigerian tailor or designer, it takes a lot of money. And by the time the output is out there in the market, it becomes largely unaffordable for an average Nigerian. So those factors, both from consumer perspective and from producers' own, it shows that the way smuggling has been encouraged is based on our factors that encourage them. We need to actually make a policy holistically. You can't say, okay, no more second-tier clothing in our shop, on our shore rather, and yet we don't encourage manufacturing. We need to talk about the inputs. You can't be productive without measuring the inputs with outputs. So what we produce at the end of the day is determined by the quantity and the quality of what is put into that system.
Fantastic. As we've got a few seconds to wrap this up, Emmanuel, but I'd like you to quickly talk about the mentality of Nigerians not patronizing made in Nigerian goods. You have people import everything from toothpick to every other thing I can't even mention right now. How do you address that as you wrap this up in 30 seconds?
In 30 seconds is lack of competitiveness.
Okay.
It's not largely based on the consumer themselves. It's lack of competitiveness. People who have the money to buy expensive clothes, we go for it, even if it is sold at the rate of $100, for example. They will go for one shirt at that rate. When Nigerian made is going for, let's say, $2, yet they will still avoid that. They will avoid that and go for the expensive one because they can afford it. The people who cannot afford it, they would rather go for what is affordable. You know, they say beggar does not have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You kept it. That was 30 seconds, I guess. Thank you so much, Emmanuel Olorunfemi.
Yes,
he is a research manager at Africa Development Studies Center, Abuja, and he is a development economist. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
I'm glad to be
with you. And it's a wrap for us here at Business Insight. Thanks to you for watching. If you did have fun, why don't you keep it with me? Same time, same station. Until then, do have yourself a fantastic day. I am Vivian Oguche.